Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, humbly we bow to you all. O beloved Guru, we thank you again and again for bringing us to these teachings, for bringing us to thy feet, and for bringing us home to God. We are your disciples. We will follow your way. We will follow your joy. Till we merge in thy love. Om. Peace. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai. 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 Jai Guru, Jai meditate briefly. Now, continuing to keep your focus inward, let's listen to these words by Swami Kriyananda from Affirmations for Self-Healing. Our topic this week is kindness. When you can view all human beings as members of your own extended family, your brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, and children, then you will find wherever you go, this love awaits you, welcomes you. It is God who gazes back at you when you behold Him in all. Kindness is the recognition that all are truly our own. Kindness comes from not minding how others feel about us. It comes from the simple understanding that kindness is its own reward, worth giving out to others because the source of so much sweetness in ourselves. For those of broad sympathies, the very universe is home. Now let's affirm together as our Guru taught. We'll repeat this simple phrase, these simple sentences over several times, first in a loud voice, then in a normal speaking voice, and then whispering, and finally mentally only, but with deep concentration. So please repeat after me. The whole world is my home.
The whole world is my home.
And the human race my family.
And the human race my family.
With God's kindness,
With God's kindness,
I embrace all men.
I embrace all men.
Again, the whole world is my home.
The whole world is my home.
And the human race my family.
And the human race my family.
With God's kindness,
With God's kindness,
I embrace all men.
I embrace all men.
Now more quietly, the whole world is my home.
The whole world is my home.
And the human race my family.
And the human race my family.
With God's kindness,
With God's kindness,
I embrace all men.
I embrace all men.
Now whispering, the whole world is my home. And the human race my family. With God's kindness, I embrace all men. Now mentally only, the whole world is my home. And the human race my family. With God's kindness, I embrace all men. Please pray silently with me. Divine Mother, help me to see that by kindness to others, I attract not only theirs in return, but thy kindness as well. May I be kind to others always. May my kindness act as a channel of thy unselfish love. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We have the choir.
Each a channel of thy it to thee. All our labors, all our joys and woes, all our pleasure, all our melody. Make us each a channel of thy peace. When in darkness, guide us from above. Where there's sorrow, may we sow thy joy. Where there's hatred, may we share thy love.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Many of you know, but some may not know that. Okay. Many of you know, but some may not know that that's a musical rendition of the beautiful prayer of St. Francis. One time Swami Kriyananda was in Assisi praying at the tomb of St. Francis, where his body is there. As Master's was, it's incorrupt, meaning that it didn't decay after death. And Swami was praying to him very deeply, how is it that you have so much sweetness, so much kindness? Because he was one of the great saints who just emanated kindness and sweetness for everyone. And very strongly, the message came back to Swamiji that, as if St. Francis were speaking to him, saying, by never judging anyone or anything, by accepting everything as it is. And it's a beautiful message for us. I want to welcome all of you who have come, and I also want to welcome all of those who are joining us online. These satsangs we broadcast, and they're watched throughout India, as our satsangs from America are, as you have participated in those. So today we've been asked to speak on the subject of the formula for success. Part of the reason that this is important is that several people have told us recently that in India especially, the younger generation is concerned about getting involved in something spiritually, because they feel that if they get involved in spiritual teachings, that they will not be able to be a success in life, that'll take away their ability or their motivation or their competitive edge, or it'll take away something that will make them unable to be a success. And so it's important that we address that, because if there is a kind of false idea that is keeping someone from doing something that is actually very beneficial for themselves, then it's good to pop that bubble and get rid of that delusion. Let me start by saying that Yogananda said that being successful in business is second only to finding God. And his two highest disciples, Rajarsi Janakananda and another man, Yogacharya Oliver Black, who Yogananda said were his two highest disciples, both of them were multi-millionaires. His highest disciple, Rajarsi Janakananda, was so wealthy that he had his own private golf course right next to his house because he enjoyed the game of golf. And so having a successful life, a successful business life, is not in any way a conflict with a spiritual life unless you allow a business life to eat up so much time and so much energy and so much of your thought and so much of your desire, and all it produces is worry. And finally, Yogananda wrote to Oliver Black, who had made millions and millions and millions and was still continuing his business ways. And Yogananda wrote to him and said, now you have become a success. You don't need to continue to do that. It won't continue to feed your own fulfillment. Why continue to work just to produce unneeded money and extra taxes and more worries? And so there's a cycle to life, and it's very important at a certain point that we become successful. Because if we can't be successful in the world, how can we be successful at the most difficult task of all, which is finding God? So it's very important that we become successful. In fact, many of you know that Devi and I write a weekly blog called The Touch of Light. And I wrote one called The Formula for Success. And so I came up with an actual formula. For those of you who are engineers or mathematicians, you will enjoy this kind of a statement. But W plus C plus I plus D equals success. W plus C plus I plus D equals success. And it's an invariable formula, just like 2 plus 2 equals 4. It doesn't vary. So it's a complete formula. But let me explain the terms. W is willpower. Before we can succeed in anything, we have to have a goal, and we have to put energy toward that goal. Yogananda defined willpower as energy plus a desire directed toward a goal. And so that energy plus the desire directed toward a goal is the starting point. And if we don't have that, we aren't going to be a success, partly because we aren't going to have any goal to succeed in. There was an American kind of folk artist, songwriter, who wrote a lyric that said, "You can take any road if you don't know where you're going." And so if you don't have a goal, you can wander around for a long time. And that isn't going to produce success in this world or success in the more important task, the spiritual task. So it has to start with willpower. And willpower is one of the tools of the mind, and one of the most important tools. Yoganandaji's his teachings at the beginning when he wrote his lessons, the first 8 or 10 lessons were on willpower, and then it led up to the energization exercises, which is to send by the concentration of our mind, the use of will, to send energy to various body parts, and then we relax and withdraw that energy. And as we learn to do that, we learn a very, very important thing as part of success, and that's that the willpower draws, because as we do that, we try to feel from the medulla that we're drawing prana from the universal source. And by our willpower, we're sending that and withdrawing that. So willpower also ties us into the universal source of strength and success. And so as we learn to channel our willpower, we have the first element of success. And if we don't learn to channel willpower, we will never succeed. Now, everybody channels some willpower. We couldn't walk out the door without willpower. So everyone channels some. But as we increase the ability to channel willpower, to channel the divine, really is what it is, but through our own particular goal, then that willpower becomes greater and greater and greater until literally we could make the sun and the moon exchange places. Many of you remember this story from Autobiography of a Yogi, where Sri Yukteswar asked Lahiri Mahashaya to help heal a friend, or to have God's power to help heal a friend. I won't go into the long version, but Lahiri told him, finally he agreed that the friend would be healed, and he said it is no more possible that he won't be healed than that the sun and the moon will exchange places. And Sri Yukteswar went to his friend's house, and he was sicker, and came back, and Lahiri gave him some oil from a lamp and said, go give him this. When he went back, the friend was dead. And Sri Yukteswar came back in kind of, great turmoil, and he said, yes, but you promised. And Sri Yukteswar said, go put the oil on his lips. And Sri Yukteswar did that. The friend came back to life. And then Sri Yukteswar came back a little aghast at having doubted, and yet very grateful. And Lahiri just said, kind of humorously and casually, I guess God felt that it was easier to heal your friend than to have the sun and the moon exchange places. And see, so a great master has so channeled that power of the universe toward whatever goal God directs him to channel it for, that there is nothing that can stop that from happening. So W. The next is C. W plus C. C is concentration. So if you begin to have a goal, you have to concentrate on that goal. If you don't concentrate on it, then you diffuse the energy of your willpower. Just as these lights give light to the room. And it's very nice because that energy of the light, of the electricity going and heating the bulb, that produces light that's diffused throughout the room, and we can see each other, and so that is very nice. But there isn't a great deal of power in that. If that same amount of energy were channeled through a laser, that laser would be able to cut through metal. And so when we concentrate whatever energy we're directing, then that energy produces great power. And Master said that we cannot find God without deep concentration. And so concentration, in fact, he defined meditation as deep concentration on God or on one of the aspects of God. And so that deep concentration, and frankly, most of the techniques and most of the struggles for us as devotees is to concentrate more deeply our minds, because the mind has a tendency to wander. Even in Gita, Arjuna says to his guru Krishna, he said, the mind is harder to control than the wind. But Arjuna, if you remember the story, he had as his flag, his symbol on the flag was the monkey. And that Master interpreted, said that the reason that he had that was because he controlled the monkey mind, the mind that runs all over and gets into mischief. So when he said the mind is more difficult to control than the wind, what he was teaching is that the use of wind or breath or prana, the pranayamas, are the way to control the mind. And so our techniques are techniques of pranayamas, and they help the mind and the prana are connected to each other. And so as we control the prana, also through energization, we begin to control the mind. And as we control the mind, we begin to be able to concentrate until ultimately we are able to concentrate on one aspect alone. If we're looking into the light, we're able to keep our mind concentrated on looking into the light or absorbing, going into the light. And if we can hold that for a sufficient amount of time, and Master said if we can hold complete concentration for an hour, we'll go into the higher state of samadhi. So it's not such a far-off goal to try to do that. So we can work on that. So W plus C plus I. We can concentrate, we can have willpower, but I represents intensity. As I was saying, you can have the same amount of electricity that goes through that light bulb. If we put it in a laser, that laser probably could cut through some metal, would be able to start a fire. But intensity, if we have 1,000,000 volts going through that laser, then we can do something much, much more powerful with it. And so concentration and intensity are related, but intensity is a little different. And so in meditation, when we sit to meditate, we need that power of intensity. So if we're meditating and we're feeling devotion, it isn't enough. It won't get us to where we're trying to go, to feel a kind of a weak sense of devotion. I would really like to see you, Lord. Maybe you could come to me even though I'm unworthy of your presence. That isn't going to attract him. Remember the law, the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. The greater the flow of energy, the greater, that's the intensity. The greater the intensity, the greater the magnetism. And so that intensity produces magnetism that in business or in any worldly goal, that intensity produces the magnetism that allows us to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. You can see this in athletes, great athletes. A great cricket player, if you were to see his eyes when he's ready to bat, then there would be intense concentration and a lot of energy in that, because you can't achieve greatness without that intensity. And then finally, so W plus C plus I plus D. What does D stand for? Duration. Not devotion. Devotion would be one of the goals that we have, but duration. You need to hold that, and especially for worldly success. And if I'm trying to convince young people that the spiritual path isn't going to block them from being successful, devotion isn't the first thing to lead with in that argument to convince them. Duration. You have to hold that energy for long enough for it to work its magic. In reality, that means a full lifetime of practice of these techniques. So this formula, W plus C plus I plus D equals success, will equal any kind of success. Our job is to figure out what success we should be after, because we can apply this formula to, I don't know, to some ridiculous thing. I had a relative who was a regional champion throughout the entire United States. She was a regional champion, so that means that she had to put a lot of energy into this. But she was a regional champion of Disney trivia. So she would have to answer something like, what did Cinderella, what color was the bow on Cinderella's shoe, and she would know that fact. So you can apply the formula for success to things that are trivial, or you can apply them to things that are important. And ultimately, the most important of all is the search for God.
Good morning. I'll also share a little bit on this topic. I'm going to take it a little farther back than when Jyotish started it, because we should define what we mean by success. He's shown us how to achieve it with this mathematical formula, but what is success? And I'd like to talk about 3 different kinds of success. First, success in the eyes of the world, in the eyes of others. And this is, easily you look around you, you look at the people, the celebrities, the business tycoons that have power and wealth and fame and the world at their fingertips. And people think, oh, look at how wonderful that is, what wonderful success they have. But it's really a house of mirrors, isn't it? It's just things are just reflecting back to us. Well, this should make me happy, and that should make me happy. But if you look at the eyes of people, by and large, who have achieved worldly success, if you look deeply in their eyes, you'll see in photographs, I don't mean you go up to them and stare in their eyes, I often see 2 things. 1, sadness. 2, loneliness. They've gotten to the height of what everyone has told them. This is what success is. And it's just empty. It has no meaning. And so if we're looking for our values or our sense of self-worth in what the world thinks of us, the world is very fickle and ultimately doesn't care about what we achieve. And so we'll find that that kind of success is but passing. And there are many people I know who are deep devotees who have achieved great success in this world. Jyotish mentioned these 2 disciples of Master, and I think it's important to add that these 2 men were self-made millionaires. It was not inherited wealth, but that they had a deeper inner life as well. But by and large, people who are only looking for that outward approval, it ends up with emptiness. And I have known a number of people who have achieved great worldly success. I'll give you an example. A good friend of ours is the inventor who invented the swipe, that app on your phone or device where you can write more easily. He's the humblest of man, the most generous of men, very quiet. He hardly talks at all. And sometimes we'll be having a discussion about things, and this man will be sitting in the back and won't say anything for the longest time. And then at the end of the meeting, he'll say, maybe we should try this way. And it's always the best solution. But he gave up all of that success. He lives very simply in the Ananda community in America, and he had the wisdom to know that what the world thinks of us isn't true success. And so then we move on to if success isn't success in the eyes of the world, what about success in our own eyes? And so let's say you're trying to achieve a goal, as Jyotish said, but you have the choice or the option of pushing somebody else aside, of taking advantage of somebody, of, I don't know if this expression is used in India, but cooking the books, is that an expression that's used? Meaning fudging the figures on the accounting and so forth. So you have that option. You think, oh, well, I achieved success, but is that success in your own eyes? Or maybe you have the choice, you know, if you make someone else look bad in the eyes of the boss, you'll get a promotion. But is that a promotion you want? Can you live with that decision yourself? And so maybe you make the choice to say, no, my own integrity is where my success lies. Living according to my principles is where my success lies. We have a school for children at the Ananda community, and we were having a track meet, an athletic competition with other schools. And there was one little boy, very sweet little boy, and he was trying very hard to win in this one competition. And he didn't win. He came in the middle of the group, but his mother asked him later, oh, well, did you win? And he very happily said, no, but I won against myself, meaning he had the best time that he'd ever had. And so this is such an important thing. And I know also many people throughout the world, and especially in India, say to us, but you can't get ahead if you try to live dharmically. No, that is the only way to get ahead, because we know the law of karma. If you cheat others, if you take advantage of others, you may have a moment of glory in the sun, but ultimately, if it's not based on dharma, sanatan dharma, truth, right action, the universe will not sustain that, and it will erode out from under you. Some of you know the story. Some years ago at Ananda Village, we live in a beautiful forested area. We had a big forest fire, which is common in California, and increasingly common, unfortunately, with global warming, although some people don't accept that it exists, but nevertheless, that's a different discussion. And the community was burnt to the ground. And as it turned out, this was 8 years into the history of the community. And the cause of the fire, it was because of some equipment that belonged to the government that was shooting out sparks, and it caught on fire along the road. And so all of our neighbors, landowners in that area, sued the county because they admitted they were at fault. And they settled out of court for literally millions of dollars. But Ananda, we made a decision. We wrote to the county government and we said, we didn't come here to take from our fellow taxpayers. We came here to contribute. So even though we sustained the biggest loss in the fire, we will rebuild by God's grace, not by taking from others. And because we made that decision, I know very deeply in my heart that God has supported our efforts and brought us what we needed at the time we needed it. And so in my eyes, I was so proud to be a part of a group that made such a decision. I felt we are a success, even if we don't have 1 rupee to rebuild this community. God will provide, because we are a success in our own eyes now. But then there's a third level of success, and I believe this is the highest, and that's to be a success in the eyes of God. And that may look very, very different from how the world sees it, even maybe how we see it, because we may think of ourselves as failures. We may think of ourselves, well, I tried to meditate, but I don't think I do a very good job. I try to serve God with love and devotion, but I forget so often, and I think of myself. And so in our own eyes, even as devotees, we may think of ourselves not as a success, but fortunately, God reads the heart. He watches the heart. He sees our sincerity, and He knows every little thought that we offer, every little act that we do of service, of devotion, of kindness to other people. I have to share a beautiful story that my friend Prasanna from Chennai told us yesterday. He said there's a lovely group of devotees here from Chennai, and he said they were having a satsang, and there was a new person who had come, who was part of a different organization, and they were talking, a young man, and after a while the young man came up to him very closely, like it was very private and kind of a secret, and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And Prasanna said, "Yes." And he said, "I've heard that the people of Ananda are very kind to each other. Is this true?" And because the organization he belonged to, they were very strict and not very warm-hearted. And Prasanna said, "Yes, we are very kind to each other." And the young man said, "I could tell by looking in your eyes that that was true." And so these are the things that how we are a success in God's eyes, even if no one ever sees it. That's in a way the best part, because God sees it. And you know, if you think about the story of the life of Buddha, he represents all those different stages of success, doesn't he? He was born a prince, Prince Siddhartha, and in the eyes of the world, wealth, riches, position, everything, the prince of the kingdom. But then that moment came where he just realized that this was all unreal, that there was suffering in the world, that people aged and they got sick and they died and they suffered. And what was the good of all this success in the eyes of the world if there was so much suffering? So he walked away from the success of the world and he began his intense search for God. And that was success in his eyes because he was honoring his search for truth. And that's important to remember. Even if you feel a failure at meditation as a devotee, your search for truth, if you never let go of that, that's success in and of itself, and God sees that. And so Buddha began his search, and he knew he was in integrity with what God wanted him to do. And then finally, after a period of intense spiritual effort, and where he would, you know, probably his story, where the temptations came and the power of darkness tried to pull him away from his search for truth. And this is also the story of our life in a little way. We think, oh, well, I'd like to meditate, but oh, my friends want to go out and have a party, so I'll go with them, and maybe I'll meditate tomorrow, and day after day goes by. It's the story of all of our lives, where we just say, where the forces, the downward pulling energy tries to pull us off. But then, if we hold firm and we say, no, if I lose my integrity, my sense of Dharma, my life has no meaning. And the Buddha persevered until finally he broke through and he achieved enlightenment, which changed the world. And that was the gift. He was a success in the eyes of God. And so for each of us, let us look for true success of purpose. And that's to live in such a way that our will, our intention, our actions, our feelings, our thoughts, everything is aligned with the divine consciousness. And then we will feel that we are pleasing, not only ultimately in the eyes of men, in the eyes of ourselves, but most importantly, in the eyes of God. And when we can achieve that, our lives have value, not only to ourselves, but to the world. So our Guru gave us a wonderful path. These techniques are very, very effective to transform our consciousness. But more important, our Guru gave us the grace to practice these techniques, to transform our lives, and to achieve that beautiful success in the eyes of God when we can say, Lord, there is no more self here, little self. All that, as Yogananda said, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. And by following his path, we too can say that. The little ego is gone. Nothing dwells in this temple now but the consciousness of God.